Hi, guys. Welcome to Own Your Essence, the podcast where healing meets empowerment. I'm your host, April DeMille, a psychic medium and a life coach specializing in grief, trauma, and toxic relationship recovery. This is a space for deep conversations, powerful transformations, and raw healing. Each week, we'll dive into soul centered topics like psychic mediumship, the supernatural, metaphysical wisdom, emotional grief, addiction, mental health, spiritual wellness, and self discovery. Through inspiring interviews and personal insights, this podcast is here to spread awareness, spark connection, and support your healing journey. If you're ready to set boundaries, reclaim your confidence, and step into your true power, you're in the right place. Let's own your essence together. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Own Your Essence podcast, where we get to have deep transformational conversations with some of our favorite people. I am your host, April DeMille, and today we are being joined by Rosa Hope. She is a PhD and award-winning astrophysicist, a mentor, and a mystic who bridges science and spirit. I am very excited to talk to Rosa. Hi. That was
Hi.
quick. So, hi, Rosa. Thank you for being here. I was just reading your introduction, and I wanted to just kind of jump right in because I'm fascinated by the fact that you have made a transition from science to mysticism, and I would love to hear what was that catalyst?
Of course. Well, first of all, I just want to say thanks for having me. I'm excited to finally get to sit down with you here.
Thank you.
What is interesting about me, there are other people coming from a science background that are in this field, that are working in spirituality, but a lot of them have a story that sounds like, I was a total materialist. I didn't believe in anything I couldn't see or measure. And then I was in a car crash and had an awakening. And that's actually not what happened to me at all. So, in a sense, I've been like this my whole life. So, even when I was a child, I was very interested in mathematics and science. But I was already very attuned, I would say. So I was that weird kid on the playground who would like go sit in a grove of trees and commune with nature while everyone else is playing kickball, So I was already that child. Um, I also had a very deep interest in the paranormal. So I was a big bookworm, and I sometimes tell a story about how when my mom used to take me to the library like every week. I'd get these big stacks of books when I was little. And what I would do is I would find these little books on like ghosts and ESP and slide them into my stack, hoping my mom wouldn't notice that I was checking out well, I guess I recognized as a child that that would probably make her ask some questions. I guess I knew it was a little taboo, but it wasn't taboo for me. I was just curious. So in a sense, I've actually been studying mysticism and like esoteric and supernatural subjects longer than I've been a scientist, honestly, because I've been interested in those things since I was maybe 7, 8 years old. And I only studied physics and astrophysics for a little over a decade. So, in a sense, even though I have the PhD in the one, uh, I have a lot more exposure and a lot of more time in the other.
Yeah, that makes sense because it's the human condition, really.
Hmm.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Was there, so I guess with that being said, what interested you? I guess you were always interested in like the logical stuff, the math and all that. But what were the steps that kind of led you into, I'm gonna go be an astrophysicist. This is what I'm gonna do.
Sure. Yeah. In a sense, in my 20s, uh, I was going through some pretty hard awakenings, I would say. I had a lot of traumas to work through. I was very confused about who I was, what the purpose of my life was. Because in a sense, it's like everywhere I landed in my young life, it felt like a shoe that was the wrong size.
Hmm.
Nothing really fit. I didn't feel like I fit in with any specific community. I moved all over the world. Um, but ultimately, around the time I turned 27, this is famous moment from an astrological standpoint. Everyone calls it a Saturn return, but that's
Mm-hmm.
usually a big wake-up call, and it certainly was for me. So the short version of that story is that I lost everything. The relationship I thought was going to be I thought I was going to marry this guy. I thought this was going to be my husband. This was going to be my life. The work I was doing at the time, I thought that was going to be my career. Everything just fell apart all at the same time.
Yeah.
And so I had the opportunity to start from scratch. And in that moment, I realized that all the things I had planned on doing were not going to happen. And I'd already begun my spiritual journey in earnest in my 20s. I was still confused and still kind of wanted to be a big deal. I was like, there's still a lot of healthy ego at that time. Um, but I was already woo. I was
Yeah.
already pretty woo. And I was talking to my girlfriends at the time. I remember my dear friend, her name's Evening Star, but she's always been very woo too. She's always been, I wouldn't call her a medium, but it's like she's always been able to see spirits or entities like with her eyeballs.
Yeah.
And so she was always very aware of things like that. And we talked very openly about those things. I was talking to her about the direction I thought I should take. I've always been very good at math. I've always been very good at school. I have deep questions about the nature of the universe. Like, what is all this? How does it work? How did life come to be? Is the universe infinite? Is it not? It's like I had all these really big existential questions,
Yeah.
and I was very good at book learning. And so, talking to her, I sort of came to the realization that that was the next step for me. So in a sense, I was this very spiritual woo person first, and that actually inspired me to go learn physics because
Mm-hmm.
I thought from a material standpoint, who knows better what all this is and how it works than the people that study it and research it full time? Those are the
Mm-hmm.
physicists.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
and so that's just what I did. I decided, I was like, okay, I think I'm going to try to do this. I'm just going to go be a physicist. You know how you do.
Yeah.
And I applied to a school and I applied to a scholarship, and I was like, if I get the scholarship, I'm going to go. I got the scholarship, got into school, and like the rest is history. So I think that's also that's not as rare as you might think. A lot of people end up becoming physicists and astrophysicists because they have huge questions about the universe
Yeah.
that they feel the call to try to answer. So
Right.
even though it doesn't always look spiritual because it is very nuts and bolts in many ways, we're doing experiments, we're building telescopes, we're using computers. The questions that inspire people like me to pursue that path tend to be very similar. What is this? How does it
Mm-hmm.
work? We know a little about quantum mechanics, but we want to really understand it. So it's like that deep curiosity is what motivates people to do it because it's very hard work. It was the most challenging thing I could think of to do. I still think it was the most challenging thing I could have done, at least like intellectually speaking.
Yeah.
Um, but in a sense, I got to the end of that journey. I was getting my PhD, and I had papers published and all of that. And I saw really clearly that although physics and astrophysics do a really good job of explaining to us how the physical universe functions, it's never going to tell us why. And
Mm-hmm.
if what my heart is really seeking is meaning and a purposeful way of life, physics is never going to provide that for me. It only can come from the spiritual side of life. Or even philosophical if you're a sort of skeptical on the spiritual side, but still it's that sort of it's mindfulness, it's psychology, it's the sense of self, it's the sense of unity or connectedness with nature and with each other and with the universe. That's where meaning comes from. That's where purpose comes from. It's not going to come from an equation.
Yeah. I would agree with that. I would definitely agree with that. A little backtrack to the Saturn blurb. Saturn is doing something in my chart hellacious right now and really pissing me off. So I just had to add that. So I'm really hoping that Saturn gets out of my hair here in a minute. Ugh,
Yeah.
anyway. Um, so okay. So one of the questions I wrote down too was, okay, so you got your PhD, you did all the things. but now we're back to how did we make the transition again?
Oh, yes, yes, yes. Okay. So, in a sense, I think the journey looks like this for a lot of people that end up having like a public facing side of this. So people who have podcasts, people who are healers, hypnotherapists, mediums, etc. It's that the transition was really from spirituality starting as a curiosity when I was very young. And then it
Hmm.
transitioned into a mode for personal transformation and evolution, second. And then it evolved again into a way of being of service. So that's what we're really talking about here is how and when did it transition for me from being about me to being about how I can serve the collective. And that
Right.
actually happened at the same time as I was getting my PhD.
Okay.
So just to make a long story short, when I was transitioning from my first physics degree into a PhD program, someone very close to me died. It was a very bad situation. And I had PTSD from that,
Yeah.
and had pretty serious symptoms that were getting in the way of things. So I was just um, sort of spontaneously dissociating
Hmm.
in the middle of work meetings and stuff. Like, so I'm trying to do research or have a conversation at a conference and I'm dissociating, and that was not working. I really
Yeah.
needed to be on the ball to be successful in grad school. And I've been going to therapy to help about this stuff because it's like I understand why a PTSD, like a traumatic thing happened, you know.
Right.
So cognitively, I understood everything, but the symptoms weren't going away and I was
Hmm.
getting desperate. And at the time, I was living in Santa Cruz, California, which I joke is like the woo capital of America, but like it kind of is. And I found a literal Santa Cruz mountain man in a cabin up in the woods who was certified in like 20 different modalities.
Man, good for
And
him.
right, exactly. And at the time when I found him, I was like, well, I don't know if any of this will work, but he has enough tools in his tool belt that I bet he's got something for
Right.
me.
Like there's
And
something to
so,
gain.
right, exactly. So, even though admittedly I was a little skeptical, um, I did it anyway. So I went and I spent some time with him. We talked about what was going on, and I basically said, "You're the expert. The ball is in your court. What do you have? Do you think would help me with the issues I'm having?"
Yeah.
And he used a type of transpersonal hypnosis
Okay.
in a session with me. And the session was about 2 hours, maybe a little less. It wasn't that long, but it was very deep. I was aware the whole time. So I still remember everything that I experienced there. Um, and all of the issues that were creating my PTSD symptoms just like came right up out where I could see them. Everything
Mhm.
came right out. I understood everything. Um, and essentially he called in an angelic being to take this thing away from me, even though I had a hard time letting go. That was the cause of my problems. I needed to let go, but bringing
Yeah.
in this angelic being to do this work allowed me to let it go and feel like okay about it, like it's in good hands or something like that.
Yeah. Let me lift that
But
burden for you.
exactly, exactly. So this was my first encounter with hypnosis ever in my life. I had seen like stage hypnosis like at a festival or something, but to me that's cluck like a chicken hypnosis. This
Right.
very different from this. And again, after our session, I thought to myself, well, I feel fine now, but I'll wait a couple of weeks, maybe it'll come back, whatever. So I was kind of waiting on it. And then a week went by, and then 2 weeks went by, and then 3 weeks went by, and no symptoms were returning.
Hmm.
It had actually my PTSD had actually been addressed in one session. I'd been in therapy for a long time.
Yeah.
And what I thought to myself in that moment was, if this can be that effective in one session, it should be healthcare.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's sort of where I became evangelized and kind of was like, I think I need to learn how to do this. Not that I knew it would be a profession that I would do for money,
Hmm.
but I thought I know people. I have friends and family that I think would benefit from this. So I went and I trained up and I got certified. And this was the first year of my PhD. So like I was training it as a hypnotist at the same time I was taking all my astrophysics classes and stuff. And all of it happened together. So I
Right.
opened my professional practice essentially because I was getting so many referrals that I was like, I don't even know these people. I don't think I should be doing this for free, you know. Um, but I was getting so many clients, I opened a professional practice maybe 2 years before I defended my dissertation. And so, in a sense, they kind of got to the end of it together too. I graduated with my PhD not that long after, I'd say starting my spiritual business. I don't really love that because I don't think about it like a business. This is my way of being of service to the
Right.
people that need the medicine that I carry.
Right.
And I take that responsibility really seriously. Um, but the change was in me too. I needed to reach a certain level of healing and self-knowledge and maturity and a sense of
Hmm.
responsibility before I was ready to serve others. Because I think if you're still tied up in a lot of ego, you can actually cause more harm than good, even if you're trying to be of service. And I needed to go through sort of these final stages of ego dismantling where I finally could accept that what I am is equivalent to my purpose here on earth. I came here with a specific mission, as I think we all actually do. And that mission is actually an expression of what I am from a spiritual perspective. My spiritual function and my mission are the same thing.
Yeah.
And that takes me or my personality totally out of the picture. Like whoever Rosa is or thinks she is actually isn't really part and parcel to the mission. So it's like my ego more than anything kind of got in the way. And
Hmm.
it's not that I don't still have an ego. I need to be able to function in the world.
Right. We're
Um,
still
but
human and have to do that
yeah,
part.
sure. But it's like the ego stopped driving the bus.
Yeah.
So the ego's like a trusted partner, I would say. I really value what my ego has to say. I just don't listen to everything it says. It's not the smartest person in the room, is what I would say.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
I love that. I think that's a great explanation of the validity of the ego once you have reached that level.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, that's it's pretty impactful stuff.
Mhm.
Um, we were actually just talking about that the other day, I think, myself and another guest, because there's so many people out there that are, trying to get rid of the ego and dismiss it, and you can't really do that because then you're just not human. And it is part of your human experience, and you can't just get rid of it. That's not how that works. That's like lopping off an arm. It doesn't work like that.
Exactly.
But you can co-create with it uh, in a more peaceful way.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I also think that any rejection we have of ourselves is going to end up being an obstacle spiritually at some point. And so the people that I see completely rejecting the ego or the role the ego plays in our day-to-day human life are going to have to contend with that at some point. It
Yeah,
being an integrated being is about drawing it all in and
yeah,
embracing all of it and learning how to be a balanced and healthy individual with all of your myriad aspects and pieces. So any piece that you're rejecting is just work you're putting off in a
yeah,
way.
yeah, totally. You're definitely going to have to revisit it later.
Hmm.
And it
Right,
will be more
exactly.
catastrophic too. Like the longer you put it
Mhm.
off, the bigger that monster gets.
The
So
bigger
have
the lesson gets.
Yeah, so have fun
Yeah.
with that one. Um,
Yeah.
but you talked about integration just now, and I'm glad you
Mhm.
brought that up, because integration is something that I think a lot of people either aren't aware of or completely misunderstand. And so I would
Yeah.
love for you to elaborate on that.
Sure. And I would agree with that statement too. Even people that know they need help integrating don't always know what it is. And the reason for that is
Yeah,
because it has many, many different definitions. Um, this is a perfect window into the way the levels of reality function. So, you know that from sort of a day-to-day, like I get up, I eat breakfast and go to work kind of perspective, some things look one way that from, or maybe something looks really bad, like a traffic jam looks really bad from that perspective. And then from a higher perspective, from a perspective of like, well, I needed some time to myself. I
Yeah.
actually would have run into a problem if I'd gotten to work on time that day. So it's like from the higher level, the traffic jam is a blessing.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're in the car in that moment, it feels like a curse, right? So it's
It's
like, right. So it's like things look different at different levels. Integration is just like that. In that,
yeah.
I would say baseline integration is really about loving yourself and loving humanity and embracing your life on earth, embracing your human experience. That's like the basic meat and potatoes integration. But there are also these higher level definitions. For example, if you've had a very intense spiritual experience or spiritual awakening or mystical vision or something, and you can't make sense of it or you can't function in the real world because you're still so stuck in the experience you had. In that case, integration is about knitting your regular day-to-day life into the spiritual things that you've learned. Some of
Mhm.
that is just about acceptance. Some of the spiritual or mystical experiences we have will never be able to explain, like while we're still in a body. So, some things are beyond our grasp, but being an integrated person is about having that wisdom or having those experiences that are much higher level and finding ways to embody them here on earth. So that level of integration is like you are trying to clear the channel so that you're the conduit that brings that higher wisdom or that light or that love into the world. So, but that's all of that has to do again with love and self-acceptance and and you don't want all these sticking points. You're trying to stay clear or clear the channel. I'm sure you know what I'm talking. I think this
Mhm.
happens in mediumship and stuff too, where it's like
Mhm.
you can bring in a distorted message if your channel isn't clear. It's like
Totally.
through the lens of your trauma or
Yeah.
through the lens of your emotions or experience. You always are trying to clear the channel. So even as someone who doesn't practice mediumship, because I'm trying to be of service to others, that's why I keep the channel clear so I can hold space so
Yeah.
that the work my clients are trying to do isn't colored by my stuff. So being integrated is I would say having as deep of roots as you have expansiveness. So however far out you've gone spiritually or mystically, your roots into your earthbound life should be just as deep. Your love of nature, your groundedness, your anchoring, those things need to be in balance. Otherwise, you're going to kind of topple over, right? If it's too heavy with like out there galactic light being stuff and
Yeah.
you're not anchored here into your earthbound life, you're going to have some problems. You can
Yeah.
also be so grounded that you're stuck in sort of a materialist consumerist paradigm because you don't have any of this done. You haven't
Yeah.
reached outward, you haven't looked upward. So what you're looking for is balance between those two things. So the reason why I advise people to have an integration practice, like a lifelong integration practice, is that as you expand more, remember to anchor more. Or as you're in a moment in your life where everything's really grounded and there's not much woo even happening, it's just remembering to look up from time to time. Even
Mhm.
in those moments where it is a workaday life and that's just where we're at, taking time and space to reconnect with whatever you want to call it, all that is, or God, or your own spirit, or this Mother Earth, whatever it is that you feel most connected to, remembering to keep time to do that. So integration goes in both directions. It's just that it's been very fashionable to go out, out, out over the last couple of years. So most clients need help with anchoring, not the other way around.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's fair to say. And so where that kind of it kind of puts a little container on your own personal life where it's like, oh yeah, I can see how with my woo here and my logic here and how you got the balance between both worlds. And I wanted to ask about that. Like, do you think that those were really prominent experiences that help you keep your balance now?
In a funny way, I would say that it's more what I am than anything else. Like I
Hmm.
am a bridge and always kind of have been. Even when I was a child, this is a quality that I have carried. So in a sense, um, I see my function more like an example or like a lighthouse.
Mm-hmm.
in that, like, this is what I embody just because of who I am, but I want others to be able to have it so they can stay balanced and functional and continue to grow and expand in mastery and expand in love, you know. So in a sense, the things I naturally do by following my instinct or following my curiosity do those things.
Yeah.
So for example, I have interests that are very material. I like to knit. I like to garden. You know, it's like I have these very tactile, tangible, you know, like cooking healthy food, you know, like learning
Mm-hmm.
how to, like I've been into like vegan food. We are not vegans, but I'm exploring how can plants provide for us in the way that I think serves our well-being the best in my family. So it's just an interest. I'm not being intense about it. But at the same time, I am reading books about, uh, you know, entities from different dimensions, or like
Yeah.
how do we explain the spiritual side or high, you know, high strangeness and stuff like that. Again, I don't have any intensity or hard and fast beliefs around it, but it's interesting to me, so I pursue it. So it's this combination of being open-minded with being analytical,
Mm-hmm.
with listening to what others have to say, but also using my discernment,
Mm-hmm.
with spending time intellectually or mentally in these high, very far out spaces, and then coming home and getting dirt under my fingernails.
Yeah.
So again, it's like it doesn't take anything fancy. It's just remembering that you are a creature that thrives when balanced. And for me, it's like I used to overthink everything. I analyzed everything. One of the biggest changes in me that also helped sort of dissolving the hold my ego had over everything, my emotions and everything else, was learning how to listen to my instincts, my gut feeling, my intuition. As a very intellectual, like math person, my intuition and I were like not plugged, we like weren't plugged in for a
Yeah.
while.
Yeah.
And
Crossed wires.
everything, right. But every decision turns into like a list of pros and cons that's very logical, and that leaves no room to give the heart what it needs.
Right.
And so, in a sense, in my own life, I had to have my heart broken many times for me to finally go, wait a minute, it keeps getting broken because it's not getting what it actually needs. How do I listen to my heart? And that was really scary because I don't, you know, I don't want to be vulnerable or whatever. I don't think anybody does.
Yeah.
We all want to
Nobody
be
wants to do
strong.
that work.
No, right. No one wants to get hurt, right?
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
takes enormous courage to be
Mm-hmm.
an open-hearted person and live from your heart, because it means people can hurt you, right?
Yeah.
But I learned, again, this is in my Saturn return and with my friend Estar, who you know, we're still friends now and we're like 40 now. So it's funny. We were kids together. But in that stage in my life when everything fell apart, the other thing I learned was that we are resilient beings. The heart is like a starfish. If a leg gets cut off, it grows back.
Mm-hmm.
And learning about my own resilience helped me have the courage to live from a more open-hearted place because I knew I could handle it.
Yeah.
Not everybody can. Like if you're in a really bad place, that's not the moment to crack yourself open, and especially if you're around people you can't really trust.
Mm-hmm.
But what I found is that the process for me, as I learned more about myself and chose to be more open-hearted and face those moments with courage, because it is scary. Like it's never going to not be scary, especially as you're trying to expand your capacity to love
Yeah.
other people. It feels like a lot, and it is vulnerable. That's true. But what I've found is that as I've been able to live more and more in this way, the people around me are better and better people. They are heart-centered people. They are loving people. They are doing the best they can. Nobody's perfect, but no one's out there trying to twist the knife or something, you know? Like
Yeah.
we all make mistakes, but you know when you're surrounded by people that have good character and
Yeah.
that care about the impact they have on you and the other people in their lives. So that's what you want. It's the process of your own transformation, and then seeing how your personal sphere and your own community transforms as you are transforming in it. You know, it all happens together.
Yeah. I would say that's true. I went through, some really, uh, I guess they were excruciating, tower moments like anybody else.
Mm.
But one of the things that I had noticed was during my integration phases, specifically, um, while I was still like cocooned, um, I would say that that was probably the hardest part and the loneliest part, and mine lasted for years and years
Mm.
because I knew I didn't fit here, but I also wasn't um, in a place where I had space for the rest to come yet because I
Yeah.
was doing such immense deep healing. And
Hmm.
so that was the part that was just, it was so painful. So, so painful because that's when you're supposed to have support and you're supposed to have the right, resources and help to, keep you going. But I didn't have that, not in the human sense.
Right.
All my helpers were not fucking human. In fact, it was
Hmm.
all my enemies that were human. It was actually at the time, right? Like it was all the people around me because I was changing playgrounds, right? So like
Right.
all the things I was shedding were all the toxic connections, family, friends, whatever that was. It didn't matter. And some of those people did come back into my life, but that's because they had gone on an expansion journey themselves, right?
Right.
And I couldn't really tell people what I needed and who I was if I still didn't know who the fuck that was. And I was
Right.
still becoming, right? So that it required me to have those answers about myself before I could put it out there. And
Hmm.
I just had to trust that process and hold on for life, like, and that was the part that took so much courage and it was so fucking hard to do.
Totally. Well, and I think I share some of that experience in my own life. When things really fell apart for me, there was no one that could understand what had happened and what I was going through internally. And so I had to stand in that space alone. And it felt like being alone in the dark for a long time. And I kept asking myself, what does anyone do from
Yeah.
here?
Yeah.
And nobody had any good answers for me. I asked my mom and I was like, what do people do when this happens? And she was like, they just keep going. And honestly, that was the advice I needed in a sense, like just keep putting one foot in front of the other. Nothing's permanent. And though uh, I began to discover the things that helped me out of that dark, lonely place. But in a sense, what I learned there has inspired a lot of the work I do now because now there are people like me and you who had that experience, but it means we know what is needed in that space more than others, right? Because we went through it alone. We also know that it doesn't have to be like that if there are others you can find that can help you through that or can support you through that. Um, but again, that's where that call to service was. I wasn't called to service in the deep, dark place. It took years. It took years from when I landed there to when I was able to show up for others and they needed what I was carrying and I was
Mhm.
ready to do it. So, and again, like there's sort of ebbs and flows to this too. Like,
For
do I
sure.
have times in my life now where I can't even? Like, yes,
Oh, yeah.
I totally do. It doesn't mean I don't love my clients and love the work that I do. I think it's the most important work that I do. It is a very direct fulfillment of my purpose. But life comes at you fast, and sometimes you need to take care of yourself and to take time to heal or to um, what's the word I'm looking for? To recalibrate, I'll say.
Yeah, that's a great word because
Mhm.
it goes back to what you said earlier. Um, how successful can we be for them if we're moving through our own filters and our own reference system, right? And
Mhm.
if our cup's not full, then we're not doing them any justice either, right? It's a
Mhm.
disservice to them and to us. And so we have
Yes.
to honor that I am not in a place to give right now. And so you're
Hmm.
right, it does ebb and flow.
Yeah. But similarly to you, it's like I have I would say I have everyone kind of has a spirit team, not just me and you. Like
Yeah,
everyone has like a
everyone.
posse that is hanging with them, trying to help them out.
Yeah,
And so I do call on them. Like if I'm having a hard day or I didn't get enough sleep and it's time for me to be with a client, again, it's the same thing as calling on a higher power. I call on my helpers and I say, help me, help prop me up, help support me through this so that this person can get everything that they need today. And I think there's a degree of humility that is important in this too, understanding that any supportive or healing work that we do as individuals is always collective because our
right.
spirit helpers are always deeply involved in every single process that we're taking part in. So in a sense, I learned in a sense to never take credit. It's not something I could do on my own, maybe ever. And it
Yeah.
took strengthening those relationships with the unseen world, I would say, to empower me enough to show up and hold space for people. But again, even that is a collective effort. It's me as sort of the physical touch point for
You're
what's
just
happening.
you're just the tool, right? But
Right,
they're kind of, yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Right,
And I
exactly.
I can totally relate to that because there were many times that I'd had talks about, discussions about I've had people ask me, how did you do it? How did you get through, X, Y, and Z? And I'm like, I didn't do shit, actually. I was pulled by my fucking hair through that whole story. So, like, that's how I explain it because I'm like, no, I didn't do that. I was kicking, screaming, fuck yous, all the things. I did not want to do it. So, so that's, yeah, my journey was not so graceful.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, you have to face plant at least once in my experience. I haven't met anyone who has had a fully like gentle and smooth
No.
process. I think in a sense, we must be humbled at some point in order to start to really understand it, to
Yeah.
really understand our interdependence with each other and with the unseen world and with everything that's happening. And unfortunately, in our culture, uh, you know, this is the West, right? This is modern society. There is such a focus on the individual, on doing the things we want to do, getting the things we want to have. That focus on ourselves feeds the ego that has to be kind of dealt with and managed in order to crack open and start actually developing a really healthy spiritual presence and spiritual life. So it's like our culture is not helping.
Yeah.
And so I think maybe outside of the West, maybe it's possible to have a sort of smooth, process through this and to have an understanding, or maybe if you have really woo parents that are good at answering questions, that maybe our children don't have to grow up and have all the hard knocks and do the face plant. That's my hope. I really hope my
Totally
daughter
my
doesn't
hope.
have to
Yeah.
do the big face plant. I hope that she can hold the truth that she already carries in her little tiny heart and just keep it. I hope she could just keep it rather than go through the arc that I did, where I'm like, I had it. And then the world was mean and kids were mean and I rejected it and I shut down. I built huge concrete walls around myself to not let it back in. It's like I had this whole thing I had to go through to get back to where I started.
Yeah.
And I guess as a parent, I'm just like, man, I well, what do we really have control over? But I'm doing my best to provide the foundation so that she doesn't have to go be sort of the prodigal son in this way, the way that
Yeah.
I did and the way my husband did too. It's like we know better, so we're hoping that we can foster a journey for her where she could just keep her truth, keep her softness, keep her honesty and her good character. Um, but man, when she gets into high school, I'm going to have to release all expectations and just try to roll with it.
Yep. My kids are all adults now. So
Mhm.
my youngest is 18. And so as does everything, it transforms. Your parenting
Mhm.
life completely changes and it's still a beautiful journey, but it's definitely different territory for
Different.
sure. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Because you can set the tone and give them, the uh the foundation that you hope to achieve and, lead by example, all the things, right? But at the end of the day, like you said, they have their own individuality. They are their own person. They have their own chart. They have their own contract with God and their soul team. And we don't get to decide what that looks like. And we just have to go, okay, we're here for you at the end of the day, whatever that looks like.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That was some realness.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Oh goodness. So do you have any like cool projects in the mix that you want to talk about? Like anything coming up that you're really excited to explore? Anything you can share?
Yes. So that's a really interesting question. Like most people in this work, I've been working on a book, and uh,
Perfect.
it's interesting because of this sort of astrophysics twist, I'll say, which is that spending a lot of time learning about the physical universe and physics, there are so many I mean, analogs, I guess I would say, or metaphors. There are so many things in that reflect back on the reality of how we live with each other and how our daily lives work and what's really important and understanding um, just the beautiful dance that life could be for us if we could just get out of our own way half the time. And that's something I really would love to share. I see a lot in our community. There's a contention between science and spirituality that is something that is made up. Before the Enlightenment, I mean, if you go back in time to the father of physics, which is Isaac Newton, he was also an alchemist, like a practicing alchemist, totally serious about it. So mysticism and hard science were once the same pursuit.
Hmm.
Then, for certain religious reasons and intellectual reasons, they were broken apart.
Yeah.
And so I challenge us now as a community, as the modern world, to actually put them back together and understand that all of it is part of the same pursuit. We're all trying to just understand ourselves and the universe better.
Hmm.
Um, and so, in a sense, that's what it is. It's like a love letter from the scientist part of myself to the spiritual part of myself, and sharing those connections. That contention doesn't have to be there. It's a belief, it's a construct that I think we're ready to dismantle. And so that's really where it's coming from. Otherwise, it's like the work that I do continues, right? Because we are always changing and life always is happening. And using hypnosis as a tool is very powerful. In many ways, my practice has shifted more towards working with groups because there's an element of the community work that happens after the hypnosis part that is just as powerful as the hypnosis itself. I'm not sure you could do one without the other. Maybe you can, but doing both together is very powerful.
Yeah.
I have fun stories at this point where I've had two people come to a workshop that didn't know each other. Then we do like a past life regression or something like that. But I had two women in a workshop that we did a past life regression, and in their regressions, they were together.
Hmm.
They were in medieval times. One was the husband and one was the wife.
Hmm.
And what happened is when everyone came back out and started to discuss their experiences, one of the women was saying, like, oh, I was a man and I lived in a house that looked like this, and there were the sheep and my wife. And the other woman's jaw just hit the floor because this other person she didn't know was describing what she had just seen in her own regression as the
Hmm.
wife, you
Hmm.
know? And so they met each other there. Their spirits came back together in the timeline to reconnect after what, 600 years apart or something like that, to come back together and have this little interesting experience at a little metaphysical shop in rural North Carolina. It's like it's just funny how these things happen. Uh but for me, the goal is always the same, which is just being, how can I be of service? And what is my heart telling me about how I can best be of service right now? And then just answering that call instead of waiting around and shuffling my feet. So in the sense, it's always the same. And the book comes out of that. It was just a call that said, I think it's time to start writing and sharing sharing what you have learned. And in a sense, it's like I think people can share that in many ways through a podcast or through a blog or through a Substack or whatever. How you do it doesn't really matter. What matters the most is just answering the call when you hear it, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. I would agree with that. And to be honest, I've also been, well, I guess I always, even when I was a kid, I always just knew I was going to be an author.
Hmm.
it was ingrained in my chart. And I was like, yep, gonna do that one day. And I did some dabbling in poetry and, had some little chat books that were, published and stuff like that. But it was beyond that. And I knew it was. And I've recently been, oh, it's time. That call's getting louder. And I'm
Hmm.
starting to go, okay, gotcha. So like I'm in a place now where I'm having to start to gradually make space for those disciplines to come in.
Right. Oh, totally. Yeah. Well, but, I mean, that's the part where we come in. This is an interesting conversation too, because I think there's a lot of discussion about ease and flow, ease and flow. And as a physicist, I'm like hard work, hard work, hard work.
You're
For
like,
me,
grind, get
again,
it.
right. But the other thing is the balance between those two things. So
Yeah,
coming out of doing all the physics stuff and the research, I had to learn how to bring ease and rest into the
mhm,
way I do things. Whereas I think if you're doing too much ease and flow, you're not making the space and exercising the discipline to get the project done. So
right,
I'm a big believer in balancing those aspects. That's integration once again, is the
right.
integration of the masculine and the feminine, is the discipline and the sit down and do itness
Yeah,
with the rest and the expansion and the intuition. They work together as partners. Yeah.
totally. Yeah, I would definitely second that.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's good talks, lady. Good talks. I love
Okay.
these
Yeah.
conversations. Um, okay, so just for fun, couple rapid fire questions.
Sure. Okay.
Um, integration in one word.
Ooh. Being concise has not always been one of my strengths.
Well,
I
luckily
will
you don't
say,
have to be concise.
I'll say well, you said in one word. That's
You
about
well,
as concise
yeah,
as you can be. Yeah. I'll say
yeah.
self-acceptance.
Okay.
Hmm.
Um, and then self-acceptance is good because it really does come down to, inventory, like inventory
Hmm.
and having to know what you're taking inventory of. And so,
Hmm.
yeah, that's a good one. Um, okay. One thing people avoid the most, which I think we've kind of talked a little bit about that.
Ha ha ha. I'm half joking, but I'll say integration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and
Well,
actually,
look.
there's so much danger in skipping it, which we kind of, went over that. But
Yes, but look, this is so I again, I'm not afraid of hard work. So when this moment came for me, I was like, fine, I know how to do hard things. But that's not true for everybody. And I have learned from years of doing this that in the spiritual community, integration work is the doing the dishes part.
it's
Most
definitely
people
like the
don't,
grunt work. It's like the
yes.
really dirty, messy stuff.
Yes, most people really don't want to do it because it's
No.
not sexy, it's not out there, it's not an adventure. It is the nitty-gritty part of this,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
it's the housekeeping and the
Which
house
is,
cleaning. Yeah,
mhm.
it's the so it I'm starting to sound a little judgy here, but what I really mean is that um just because something's hard doesn't mean it's bad, and learning how to be okay facing a hard piece of work to do yourself is actually really liberating. So I do want to sort of like put that message out there on blast if it's possible, that like I know it's not sexy and I know it's hard, but that doesn't mean it isn't the right thing to do.
Right. Yeah. I would agree with that.
Mhm.
Um, okay. One thing people romanticize too much.
Um, I would say expansion of consciousness and
Yeah.
altered states of consciousness. Or maybe, well, it's funny because the majority of my work is, as I told you, is done in an altered state. My clients are in an altered state because we're using hypnosis. But I think people get very excited about seeing what's out there and learning information from beings or entities or spirits that are out there,
Mhm.
uh, sometimes at the cost of what's going on down here. And I just want to say, guys, the work is here.
Mhm.
Our work is here. And even though it is nice to have an awareness of our broader context, um, it should not turn into escapism.
Right. Yeah.
It
Because
needs
that's
to
easy
be
to do.
right.
That's
It should
easy to
all be
do.
in support of our work here.
Yeah. Yeah. I would agree with that too.
Mhm.
Um, and uh, okay, last question. What surprises you the most about being human?
Hmm. Well, I think the answer to that has changed over the course of my life. When I was young, the answer is people. I could never understand anything anybody was doing and felt like an alien on Earth.
Yep.
Um, because so many interactions I had, I was always left with this question like, why would they do that? Why would they say that? Why would anybody think that?
Yeah.
But as I took the time and had the discipline to try to learn about people and understand behavior more and things like that, um, now I think I lean more towards the surprise and delight. And although this is a strange and simple answer, the things that surprise and delight me the most now are seasons.
Yeah.
Understanding and really paying attention, very detailed attention to what changes in your local environment as the year turns and the changes in yourself as the year turns. Those things are very knitted together. Your emotions, your well being, how fast your hair and nails grow, the things you're hungry for, all of that stuff is actually deeply tied to the natural cycles of the seasons on planet Earth. And so that has been something I've really enjoyed being a part of, especially as I've gotten more into gardening and growing food. Those things become more important, obviously, if you want a good outcome. But it never ceases to delight me. The new things I discover, the new connections I find between the different animals and plants that live in my yard and in my neighborhood, and how they connect with each other and how they connect with well, maybe it's like the actual ecosystem, the way the web of life is so interconnected, becoming more and more clear to me, has been a constant source of delight.
Yeah. I bet. And
Mhm.
also you you talk about like the awareness of how, it's all interconnected. And the only thing I'm not a gardener. I don't
Mhm.
know anything about it. But when I have experienced small little phases of that, the one thing that I did learn that I never knew about gardening or farming was that you plant certain things based on the moon cycles even and certain astrological signs. And I never knew that. I was like, what?
Mhm.
This is what farmers have been doing their whole fucking
Yes.
life? Oh my
Yes.
God, there's nothing mystical about that at all. But what, like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm like,
But it
holy shit, but it
is. It
is.
is
Yeah,
though.
it
Yeah,
is.
it's
That's my point.
both.
That's my point. It
Right.
was so mystical. And I was like, what the fuck? This is awesome. But like, I
Yeah.
never knew that. Like,
Well, I would challenge every woman to keep a journal of the phases of the moon and what's happening in your own body for like 3 months.
oh
And
yeah,
you might be surprised at how much, especially as women, our bodies are very closely tied to lunar cycles,
absolutely.
and annual cycles too. So I'm just saying, just pay attention, write it down. You might be surprised what you discover about yourself. It's all we nothing is truly in isolation. Nothing's truly in a vacuum.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of reward and fulfillment in the discovering of that for me.
Yeah. I could see that. It's pretty cool stuff. Yeah, absolutely. Rosa, thank you so much. Is there anything else that we left out or that you want to add before we hop off of here?
I think we've really covered it, but I do want to say again, thank you, April. Like it's a Sunday afternoon, like the weather's dreary here, but I really enjoyed this conversation with you and getting to connect after all this time. And I love what you're doing, and I hope you just keep spreading the word. You're doing amazing things. So thank you.
Thank you. And I loved our conversation. I think we've covered some territory, which is really good. I always love doing that. So thank you for helping be a part of that today. This is awesome.
Of course.
Good talks. Okay. Well, I'm going to end it right here. Bye, you guys. See you next time.
Bye.
Thank you for joining Own Your Essence. I am beyond grateful to our guests for sharing their wisdom and to you, our listeners, for being part of this journey toward healing and empowerment. If today's conversation resonated with you, please feel free to subscribe, leave a review, and share this space with others who might need it. If you have questions, topic ideas, want to be a guest, or would like to work with me privately, send an email. I'd love to hear from you.